You notice it in small ways first. The library closes an hour earlier. The bus runs less often. A letter from the state talks about a hiring pause and spending review, like it's housekeeping. Then you hear a new phrase on the news, days of cushion, and learn your state has fewer of them than last year. Costs keep rising, but the savings that bridge bad months are thinner. It doesn't feel like politics. It feels like a bill coming due. If a household had 6 weeks in the bank and now has 4, you would cut back fast. States are there now. Some depend on tourists, others on oil. Big ones carry health and pension bills that never wait. The question isn't whether someone will struggle. It's who sends the first letter that changes hours, services, and checks. The monthly bill for your state just got heavier. A small line in a budget vote now feels like a mortgage payment. Without it, the numbers do not balance, and that is new. Here is the quiet shift. In fiscal 2025, the typical state could cover only 46.9 days of expenses from its savings. Last year, it was 53.2. That is the first drop since the Great Recession. Wyoming sits on about 320 days. New Jersey is at 0. The spread tells you who can ride out a storm and who cannot. These are not guesses. They come from the latest reserve tallies states filed with their budget officers. The cash coming in is softer too. After inflation, total state tax collections in the first half of fiscal 2025 slipped 0.7% from a year earlier. Corporate income taxes did worse, down 8.6% over the same period. When business payments fade and sales taxes cool, every dollar of spending has to be argued for. That is how cuts begin. You can see how thin the margin is when a big program overruns. In October, California's nonpartisan analyst documented a $3.4 billion transfer from the general fund into a Medi-Cal payment account to cover higher-than-expected costs, an emergency move to keep provider checks going. News reports the week it happened matched the figure. If the largest state needs bridge money mid-year, others with weaker cushions have even less room. Put it in kitchen table terms. If your household had 53 days of cash last year and 47 today, you would delay repairs, skip trips, and watch the mailbox. States are doing the same, hiring pauses, project deferrals, and talk of dipping into savings. Earlier this year, Pew noted that many budgets already anticipated tapping reserves in fiscal 2025. Some have started. That means the cushion everyone pointed to in 2022-2023 is now thinner, while costs for healthcare, wages, and maintenance keep climbing. One more warning sign: revenue is not just low, it is below where it typically sits for this point in the cycle. Pew's longer view shows state tax collections recently ran under their 15-year trend. When your baseline is weak, even a small shock forces hard choices. So the question is not, will someone go broke, but who flinches first when the next bill hits? States that rely on volatile sources, like energy royalties, or on tourists to fill hotel rooms, have less predictability. Big, complex systems with costly health programs face different risks, but share the same math. Less buffer, slower income, more pressure. If the spare tire shrank and the road got rougher, you do not need a forecast to know what happens next. The budgets held up by yesterday's surplus are meeting today's shortfall, and the gap is showing. Then, states rode a revenue wave. Pandemic aid and roaring markets swelled collections. Rainy day funds hit records. Budgets closed with room to spare. Now, the air is thinner. By fiscal 2025, the typical state's cushion slipped to 46.9 days of spending, the first decline since the Great Recession. Several governments already plan to tap savings this year. That means the easy years are over, and the safety net is smaller. Income is softer in real terms. In the first half of FY 2025, total state tax revenue fell 0.7% after inflation. Corporate taxes were the weak link, down 8.6%. Sales taxes also cooled. With less coming in, every spending line gets harder to defend. What changed under the hood is simple. Spending climbed on items that do not pause in a downturn: healthcare, payroll, maintenance, debt service. Revenues normalized after the surge. The result is a tighter margin almost everywhere. Risk is not evenly spread. Tourism states feel slow travel immediately. Nevada's visitor economy supplies a large share of the general fund. When rooms sit empty, hotel and gaming taxes wobble. Hawaii faces a similar exposure. These budgets depend on visitors' wallets. Resource-heavy states swing with oil and gas. Long-run data show the highest revenue volatility in Alaska, North Dakota, New Mexico, and Wyoming. When commodity prices slip, their tax base can shrink fast, and cushions disappear quicker. Big, complex states carry different pressure. California's health program required a mid-year $3.4 billion transfer to keep provider payments on schedule. That move is legal and temporary, but it shows how one program can pull cash even before a recession hits. Other large states face pension and benefit costs that grow on their own timetable. The gap did not explode in 2023, but it remains large and demands cash every year. Add one more structural shift. Many states cut income tax rates in recent years. That raises reliance on sales taxes. In a slowdown, households spend less, and that dependence becomes a weakness. The pattern is already visible in the first half numbers. Plain chain, without jargon, revenues cooled, fixed costs kept rising, cushions thinned. Some states will borrow or freeze hiring, others will trim services. High tax or low tax does not decide who stumbles first. Diverse, stable bases help. Narrow, volatile ones do not. Close this section with the yardsticks we will use from here on. Size of reserves in days, volatility of the tax base, and the weight of ongoing obligations. Those three tell you who bends and who breaks when growth slows. Next, the first cracks, where bills, letters, and mid-year moves reveal stress before headlines do. The first cracks don't show up in speeches. They show up in collections and bills. Crack 1 is the tax base. After adjusting for inflation, total state taxes in the first half of fiscal 2025 came in lower than a year earlier, and the weakest line was corporate income tax. Corporate receipts fell hard, down 8.6% for the half, so every forecast that leaned on business profits now sits on softer ground. Sales taxes also cooled. When both pillars slip, flexibility disappears fast. Crack 2 is how revenue is built. Some states rely on streams that swing. The latest volatility work from Pew shows the spread is wide. Iowa sits near the low end, while Alaska is the outlier with the highest score over 2008-2022. That means energy states can feel a sharp drop in cash when prices wobble. Those swings get worse in downturns, making cuts or withdrawals from savings more likely. Crack 3 is the tilt toward sales taxes. Many states trimmed income tax rates in recent years, which raises dependence on what households buy. Urban's review of early FY 2025 data already shows real sales tax growth under pressure. In a slowdown, people spend less, so a sales-heavy system hits the wall first. Obligations don't wait for revenue to rebound. California just used a legal backstop to move $3.4 billion from the general fund into a Medi-Cal payment account to cover higher-than-expected costs. The state's nonpartisan analyst recorded the transfer and spelled out a bigger slate of fixes ahead. One program pulled billions in the middle of the year, before a formal recession call. That's what tight margin looks like in practice. Pensions remain a slow, steady pressure in several large systems. New Jersey's official dashboards still track sizable unfunded liabilities despite recent contributions. Illinois' Legislative Fiscal Office keeps a standing library of pension condition reports. Even with market gains, the cash needs are heavy and recurring. These are not crisis headlines. They are checks that clear every month. Translate this to household terms. If revenue is down a little in real dollars while health costs, payroll, and maintenance rise on their own schedule, the gap becomes real money this year. If this figure for reserves is lower than last year, the cushion shrinks from months to weeks. If your main tax source is volatile or tied to shopping, a demand dip turns into a budget meeting by the next quarter. None of this requires a crash. It only requires flat growth. Two more points that decide who blinks first. A high-tax state can be sturdier than a low-tax one if its base is broad and stable. The reverse is also true. A low-tax state can be fragile if it leans on one sector or on visitors. And migration shifts matter at the margin. Losing higher earners or corporate headquarters weakens the base even when population counts look steady. When these cracks connect, softer corporate taxes, sales exposure, rising program costs, thinner cushions, you get a map of first movers toward cuts or borrowing. The next step is a trigger, not a theory. A mid-year overrun, a missed forecast, a bond warning. That is the push that forces a choice. The letter does not shout. It lists steps: hiring freeze, spending review, early draw from savings. That is the moment a budget turns from watchful to active. California shows how a single program can force that turn. In March, the administration moved about $3.4 billion from the general fund into a Medi-Cal payment account to cover higher costs and keep provider checks on time. The state analyst documented the transfer and its legal basis. News outlets matched the figure. If the largest state needs mid-year cash to bridge health bills, places with thinner cushions have less room to maneuver. Reserves are smaller than they were. By the close of fiscal 2025, the median state could fund only 46.9 days of operations from rainy day savings, down from 53.2 a year earlier. Some sit far above that level, others at or near zero. The point is not the extremes. The point is the direction. The cushion is thinner as costs rise. Revenues are not falling off a cliff, but they are softer after inflation. In the first half of fiscal 2025, total state taxes slipped 0.7% in real terms. Corporate income taxes did the most damage, down 8.6%. Sales taxes cooled too. That mix drains flexibility quickly because the hard bills, healthcare, payroll, maintenance, debt service, do not pause. Credit agencies are not ringing alarm bells, yet they are frank about the slower growth ahead. One review in February said, weak tax revenue growth this year should not by itself break credit quality, but it also underscored that management will need to trim, reprioritize, or use reserves as the cycle cools. Translation: no crisis today, less slack tomorrow. Household language helps. A rainy day fund stated in days means exactly that. If the economy stalled and no new money arrived, that is how long the state could pay its ordinary bills from savings alone. When that count falls, even by a week, any surprise, wildfire, storm, a missed revenue forecast, forces a choice between cuts and borrowing faster than last year. Three quiet signals often arrive together. First, mid-year transfers like the Medi-Cal move. Second, formal notices of planned draws from reserves as spending outpaces income. Third, memos that slow hiring or defer capital projects. Each is reversible on paper, but together they tell you stress is real before the headlines do. The next section connects those signals to where the money leaves first: sales, corporate receipts, and visitor taxes that fade when families and firms tighten up. He lines up the chain, not the slogans. Spending at stores slows. Sales tax softens. Corporate profits cool. Forecasts miss. Savings fill the gap. Then the gap returns. Start with the trend line. By late 2024, state tax revenue sat about 3.2% below its 15-year path after inflation. 2 years earlier, it was far above it. That pivot means the usual take is no longer arriving on schedule. Budgets feel that before voters do. Now look at the current year. In the first half of FY 2025, total state taxes slipped 0.7% in real terms. Corporate income tax did the damage, down 8.6%. Sales taxes cooled as households pulled back. When the business line and the shopping line both ease, flexibility disappears fast. Exposure matters. Nevada's visitor economy carried an estimated $98 billion total impact in 2024, about 37% of state GDP, and generated roughly a third of the general fund. Fewer trips mean smaller hotel, gaming, and sales receipts almost immediately. Hawaii faces the same kind of shock when planes empty out. This isn't theory. It is the tax base. Volatility isn't just a headline, it is measured. Pew's long horizon work shows Alaska at the top for swings, with energy price moves driving the spikes and drops. New Mexico is high as well. Systems that lean on severance or on unusually jumpy income taxes wobble more in a downturn, so they reach for reserves sooner. Obligations do not wait. We already saw a large state move billions mid-year to keep a health program current. The official brief from its nonpartisan analyst documents the $3.4 billion transfer and explains the legal backstop. That kind of action tells you cash is tighter even before a recession is declared. Translate to household money. If the corporate line is down, the school district feels it. If the sales line softens, cities pause paving, park hours, and bus replacements. If this figure for reserves is smaller than last year, every surprise becomes a decision point weeks earlier than before. 3 more signals confirm the pattern. Procurement slows as agencies delay purchases to protect cash. Capital projects slide a quarter. Treasury memos start to mention managed draws from savings rather than record balances. None of these moves crash a budget. Together they say the cushion is thinning while fixed costs, healthcare, payroll, debt service, maintenance, keep rising. So the evidence aligns. Revenue below trend. Real declines early in the fiscal year. High dependence on visitors in some places. Measured volatility in resource-heavy states. A documented mid-year health transfer in a large system. And a smaller cushion than last year. From here, the first 10 at risk are not chosen by headlines. They are picked by these metrics. Next comes the turn from indicators to action. Who trims, who borrows, and who blinks when the economy takes one more step down. Here is the cold conclusion, without drama. This is not about willpower. It is about structure. Thinner cushions, softer revenue, costs that do not pause. The states that feel a recession first share 3 traits: small rainy day funds in days, volatile tax bases, and heavy ongoing obligations that grow on their own schedule. When those 3 line up, the next bad month becomes policy, not a headline. So the first cohort, unranked and based on those yardsticks. Energy-dependent systems with the widest revenue swings: Alaska, North Dakota, Wyoming, New Mexico. Tourism-driven budgets that live or die on full plains and busy hotel floors: Nevada and Hawaii. Big programs with costly health or retirement lines and limited room to maneuver: New Jersey and Illinois. A large, complex state that already needed a mid-year transfer to keep health payments current. California. Add one more energy-exposed Gulf state with uneven cushions and storm risk. Louisiana. That is 10. Not a prediction of default. A list of places where cuts, hiring freezes, fee hikes, or one-time fixes tend to arrive first when growth slips. What separates who bends from who breaks is simple to watch. 1. The reserve dial in days. If this figure fell from last year, every surprise forces action sooner. 2. Real tax receipts. If corporate and sales lines stay weak after inflation, flexibility drains fast. 3. Mandated spending. Health programs, pensions, debt service, and maintenance move even when revenue stalls. They will crowd out parks, libraries, buses, and road work before anything else. Do not confuse high taxes with safety or low taxes with risk. Diverse, stable bases help. Narrow, jumpy ones do not. A state with broad income, property, and sales streams can ride out a dip better than a peer leaning on oil checks or visitor nights. And migration shifts matter at the margin. Losing higher earners or headquarters weakens the base even if population totals rise. From here, the playbook is familiar. First come memos, hiring pauses, delayed procurements, managed draws from savings. Then mid-year fixes, transfers, service trims, smaller capital plans. If the slowdown lasts, temporary taxes or fees appear. None of this means broke. It means earlier choices and sharper trade-offs. The cliffhanger is on the calendar. The next NASBO fiscal survey and Pew Reserve update will show whether days of cushion slipped again and which lines missed plan. If those reports confirm weaker real receipts and thinner savings, expect more states to move from watchful to active. Not with speeches, but with letters that change hours, projects, and checks. The warning is already in the paperwork. The question is, which of these 10 sends the first one to every agency?